like half of it in each hand. If you can do that for 250 yards, then you're in like a pretty good spot. So I was like, let me try it. And I got like 200 yards before my grip failed. But I was like, I measured it out and everything. I was just like on a whim. I did it on Tuesday, and and I'm still feeling it today. It sucks. 80 for me. Yeah, I had 80 in each hand. So, oh, it was, and the worst part is the turning around. Like the walking is fine, but the turning around sucks. All right, so today we're going to talk about mental imagery, meditation, and self-talk. Those are two separate concepts. So like meditation, mental imagery is one, self-talk's another. Do you guys have any experience with like mental imagery or meditation or anything like that? Like, have you ever been led through it, like by a coach and stuff? Okay, no. So one thing that's super interesting about mental imagery is like they've done studies upon studies upon studies about the difference between like actually going through something yourself and imagining it. So like just imagine how vivid dreams feel, right? It feels like you're actually there. Okay, but they've actually done studies of like it's just as valuable like for skill development and actually improving yourself overall, like to just imagine yourself doing it as actually doing it in person. So like they did a study with a college basketball team. I can't remember which team it was, but they split the team into three people. They just said one group of 5, you're just going to do what you normally do. The other group of 5, we want you to stay after practice and shoot 100 free throws. And then the third group, we want you to go home after practice, but imagine yourself shooting, like actually sit down and take the time to mentally imagine yourself shooting 100 free throws. And at the end of like, I think it was a 10-week period, the group that didn't do anything different didn't improve, right? The group that did 100 free throws every single day after practice, they improved by about 24%, and the mental imagery group improved by 23%. So all of a sudden like, and you can look up studies and those kind of things, but mental imagery is an extremely valuable tool of actually improving yourself without having to do it constantly. And the nice thing about that is like, especially whether it's throwing, whether it's hitting, you can only hit for so long before you start getting sore, you start getting, mad at you, right? But you can go home and you can imagine yourself working through ABs, right? Or like the power of actually when you're in the cage going through a mental at bat opposed to just swinging, right? Those kind of things are extremely valuable. But with that, the big deal with that is setting aside time for it. So like everyone knows that mental imagery is a thing, right? And they know that it exists, but they're like, why would I do it? How do I do it? And then when should I do it? Okay. So with mental imagery, the why is you get extra reps for free, okay? Which at the end of the day, you're trying to increase your reps so that you get better at your task, okay? This is going to help. You don't actually have to be in person. You can be at home. You can be laying in your bed before you fall asleep, and you can get better at hitting, okay? The why is if you have the ability to go through that mental stuff, whether it's going through things that seeing yourself be successful or seeing yourself struggle and overcome it, those are both extremely valuable tools for you moving into, whatever you're going to do. The other thing too with meditation specifically is it allows you to be more relaxed in higher stress environments. So like I was really into meditation when I was in high school, and I didn't really see it pay off until all of a sudden I got into college. And for me, every single intense situation, you couldn't, if you just zoomed in on my face, you couldn't tell if I struck out the side or I just gave up a grand slam, right? You couldn't tell if if the winning run was on second base or if nobody was on and there was 2 outs, right? And that was a skill that I developed on accident. Like I didn't intentionally think like, oh, I'm going to meditate or hey, I'm going to be really relaxed so that it'll help me play baseball. But now in retrospect, the fact that I did those things helped me, right? And so now I try to give that to people. I'm like, hey, spend some time just box breathing, which is 5 seconds in, 5-second hold, 5-second out, 5-second hold, right? And just sit there and do that for as long as you can. And when you see your attention drift, when you see all of a sudden you're no longer paying attention to counting your breath, lock back in. Okay, that's a valuable skill as well. Does that make sense? But the more control that you have over your emotions and the way that you see things, the better off you're going to be in sport and in life, okay? With that, you can kind of do like, there's this idea of like everything happens twice. So like you can imagine yourself doing it once, and then you also can do it in real life. So like whether it's introducing a new skill, whether it's trying to get better in the field, trying to get better hitting, it's valuable to, before you're about to do whatever you're about to do, imagine yourself doing it. And that's something as simple as being like, okay, hey, I'm at second base. I want the ball, right? You guys know Trotsky, Nate Trotsky. You watch his stuff. So one of his big things is you want the ball, right? You have that suave, you want that, right? You want that. But with that, I want you to imagine yourself actually fielding, making the play before the pitch is delivered every single time, being like, oh, if it gets hit to my left, I'm doing this. If it gets hit to my backhand, I'm doing this, right? Imagine yourself do it. So then all of a sudden when it actually happens, you're like, oh, I already did this, right? I've been here before, right? But that's a valuable way to use your mental imagery. The other thing is making yourself like deal with failure exceptionally well. So if you are going to struggle, know what your routines are. We've talked about routines. I can send you the videos of me discussing a refocus and a release routine, but actually practice it. So like one of the things that I've seen a hitting coach do before is, okay, hey, like whether you're on a cage or taking BP or whatever, hey, bad call. And immediately you have to practice your routine. So that's something that's beneficial in practice, but you can do that at home on your own. Like, hey, how am I going to respond to an umpire making a bad call? How am I going to respond to missing my pitch? Right? Is that bat over? Do I just kind of give up? Do I pout until I'm out? Right? Or am I going to lock back in and be like, hey, if you give me anything close, I'm going to take what I get now. Right? That kind of thing. But practicing that is extremely valuable. Okay? But with that, one thing that I wanted to do with you guys real quick is run you through just a quick guided meditation, okay, or a guided mental imagery, okay? You guys can sit right where you are. All I'm going to have you do is sit with your feet flat on the floor, sit up tall, nice and straight, and I want you to start just by focusing on your breathing, and then slowly closing your eyes. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to talk you through a situation, and I want you to vividly imagine it as well as you can, okay? So I want you to feel yourself in the situation. We're about to take an at-bat, okay? I want you to feel your jersey on your shoulders. I want you to feel the baseball pants on your pants. I want you to feel the smell or smell the smell of fresh cut grass in the outfield, okay? I want you to pick your bat up, feel it in your hands. The faint smell of pine tar that you experience every time you pick it up. Walking to the plate. Doing your pre-at-bat routine, whatever that is for you. Stepping in when you're ready. And looking up at the pitcher. I want you to have your approach. I want you to take some time. You can pause here. You can't pause in real life, but you can pause here. What is our approach? What are we looking for? What are we expecting out of this pitcher? He's a righty, pretty tall guy, low 3/4 slot. You haven't faced him yet today, but the guy ahead of you lets you know that he has a two-seam fastball, a changeup, and a slider. So early in the count, pick which pitch you're sitting on, where you're expecting to see it, and he delivers. Fastball outer half. You either take a swing or you take it, strike either way. Step out, adjust how you need to. And I want you to sit back in, step back in. Look up at the pitcher and he delivers. Change up, low and away, good take. Do your pre-pitch routine, get back in. You look at him and he delivers. This time you hit the fastball. Imagine yourself running to first, beating it out. All right, I want you to relax. Come on out of it. Come on out of it, and open up your eyes. So that's a really, really simple way to do it. Does that make sense? But that's kind of what it feels like. You can do guided mental imagery, you can do guided meditation, you can do those kind of things, or you can do it on your own. I feel like it's extremely beneficial to do it do it guided for a little bit. One of the things that I used to do when I coached college ball is I used to do, when I had this meeting every single week, we would always finish it with a 5-minute, either a guided meditation or just a 5-minute mental imagery, where I'd have everybody go out and we'd either lay around in the locker room or we'd go out into right field and relax and just hang out for about 5 minutes before practice started, right? That's something that you can start adding into your routine, right? Like when I was down at Drury, we used to do that with the hitters. Before every single time when we would do in the winter when it was cold, we would say, okay, hey, 5 minutes, and turn all the lights off in our building, and they'd sit and they'd start their hitting practice by getting their minds right, letting go of the tests, letting go of the stress, letting go of everything else, because all that matters for this next hour is your ability to become a better hitter, right? That was one of the biggest things that I took away from that. I loved it. It was extremely valuable. That's something that you can add into your own practice. Don't wait for your coach to do it. Does that make sense? Okay. So with that, there's a bunch of different options with meditation. You can do like a mantra, like a confidence conditioning statement. So like actually reminding yourself of like, hey, I'm strong, I'm locked in. I'm locked in. Just keep repeating that to yourself, of like, hey, I'm locked in. I'm ready to hit. I'm ready to hit. Repeat it to yourself constantly. And whenever you see your mind drift, you lock it back in as quick as you can. Does that make sense? You could do box meditation, like I said, 5 in, 5 hold, 5 out, 5 hold. You could do that. You can also do a 6-2-8, which I like that a little bit more. So it's a 6 breath in, 2 count hold, 8 seconds out. Okay. But the biggest thing is you need to imagine yourself having adversity and overcoming it and being successful. Both of those things are extremely valuable. Okay. One of my favorite stories in the book that I've talked about, The Hard 90 by Zach Sorensen, is he asked Manny Ramirez, hey, can I sit in on, you watching film? Because he was a mental performance coach for the Indians when Manny was with the Indians. And, Manny's like, yeah, but don't bother me, but anyway, so he sits in, and Manny had just gone, I think, 0 for 3 the day before. And so he's like really excited, like, man, this is one of the best hitters in the league. How's he gonna, like, what's his film gonna look like? What's he gonna do in order to get himself back? Because he doesn't slump, like, what's he gonna do? He's super pumped. So he sits in, Manny turns the TV on, throws on some headphones. He starts hearing some Latin music, coming from the headphones. And then he proceeds to watch Manny watch himself hit doubles and home runs for the next 2 to 5 minutes. And just constant barrel, over and over and over for the whole time. Afterwards, he watches it, and Zach's like, I know I said I wasn't going to ask you any questions, but dude, what was that? You didn't watch a single one of your at-bats from yesterday. You didn't watch any of your strikeouts. How are you going to overcome that? And Manny looks at him and says, why would I watch those ABs? That wasn't me. I wasn't at my best. Why do I want to remember what that's like? He's like, me hitting doubles and home runs, that's me. That's who I am. That's who I want to be. All right, so I'm going to remind myself of what that is, what that's like, okay? And that's kind of the idea with the mental imagery is you got to remind yourself of who you are at your best. I see it so many times where, especially on the pitching side, you see it on the hitting side too, but especially on the pitching side, where a guy will throw 3 great curveballs, that 4th one sucks, and he thinks he has to fix his curveball. Like, no, just go back to the 3 good ones you just threw, right? Just go back to who you are when you're at your best. You don't have to fix something. But a lot of that is how you see yourself, how your mental imagery is, like how do you imagine yourself, and most importantly, your self-talk. How are you talking to yourself, okay? And that's what we're going to talk about next. So with self-talk, this alone, self-talk and mental imagery have been the 2 most valuable coaching cues, mental performance talks that I've ever given. When I was at Iowa Western, there were 2 of our players who, they were just kind of inconsistent. Like you could see it on their face. Like anytime that they failed, like they wore it, right? And over the next couple, weeks, we talked about that's me, but like Manny Ramirez, we talked about those things, and performance improved a bunch because they just started focusing on themselves being successful. They started focusing on things that made them good, right? They didn't focus on their failures. They focused on what made them successful and doing that as often as possible. Regardless of if they were successful or not, they reminded themselves of, hey, this is who I am when I'm at my best. And whenever they succeeded, they pointed it out, because your brain will not pat you on the back for doing something well, right? It's trying to keep you alive. It's not trying to make you feel good about yourself. You know what I mean? So if you get a hit, the only person, your buddies might tell you a good job, but you need to tell yourself, that's me. That's who I am when I'm at my best. When I make a play in the infield, that's me. You have to remind yourself, because your brain will not, okay? But with self-talk. So everybody knows that one guy, whether it's when you were growing up or maybe he's on your team now, but where, you know, it's either like their relationship with a coach or with a parent or whatever is just not good. And when their parent or that coach is watching them play, they suck. But when they're not there, they succeed. Do you guys know a player who was like that, right? I have a couple guys that I remember where anytime his dad wasn't there, he showed out. He got after it. And then if his dad was there, he'd go 0 for 3 almost for sure. And a lot of that was because the added pressure and the negative self-talk that his dad unintentionally was putting on him. Does that make sense? So his dad wanted him to do well, but he was actually, you know, putting more pressure on him than he needed, right? He's actually hurting him by saying, hey, you know, you're better than this. We do hitting lessons. You need to, you know, let's see it. You know, that's added pressure. Hitting's already hard enough. You don't have to try to justify all that money your parents spit on you for every at bat. That's added pressure, okay? But even more so than that situation, I see so many players carrying that mentality, carrying that pressure with them as they go into their college career. Does that make sense? That's not something that you want. You want your self-talk to be extremely positive because it's naturally negative, okay? So do you guys know how many thoughts you have on an average day? Like, they've done studies on this. It's pretty crazy. It's way more than you probably would think. Not a billion. Okay, less than that. But it's 60 to 70,000. So on average, and that's like 40 to 50 a minute thoughts just running through your brain constantly. And they've done studies on this, and of those thoughts, of those 60 to 70,000, about 75% of them are naturally negative, right? Like I said earlier, your brain's 100% just trying to keep you alive. So all it's doing is drawing attention to the things that it doesn't like, or that it's like, hey, this was bad, or hey, this might potentially happen. Okay? And so, and of those 75, or of those thoughts, of those 60,000 thoughts, 90% of them are repeated day after day after day after day. Does that make sense? So that's something that you have to know, is 75% of those thoughts that you have are, you know, negative, and 90% are repeated. Does that make sense? So if you don't take hold of like, hey, I'm going to change the way I think, change the way I talk to myself, you're naturally going to spiral. And in a game of failure like this, you have to take charge. You have to take hold and change. All right? Just imagine how much you'll have, like how much, you know, like how much of a benefit you'll have over your teammates or your opponents if you change those 75% negative thoughts to 50%, right? All of a sudden, you know, you're on your own side at least 50% of the time. That's a lot better. But with that, we have to be realistic with our self-talk. So it's not something that we're going to just like ignorantly say, I'm the best baseball player in the world, right? But you're going to, whenever a negative thought arises, you're going to have a reframe statement with it, okay? Like, instead of being, I'm bad at hitting breaking balls, you'll say, when I stay in my legs and I remain adjustable and I stay under control, I can stay on breaking balls, right? Or I can fight them off, or whatever is true for you, okay? Same thing with, okay, instead of being like, man, I suck going to my left in the infield. It's not going to be, okay, hey, I suck going to my left in my infield. Like, when I read it early and I get a good jump and I work around the ball, I'm good at fielding balls to my left side, right? So, like, that isn't untrue, right? You're just giving it a qualifying statement. So instead of it being something negative, it's when is it positive? Does that make sense? And so, like, a lot of the time people are like, hey, think positively, but they never teach you how, right? But that's how you reframe things in your head of like, hey, I'm going to switch this and make it positive, okay? With that too, you also want to have like some signs of success that you're going to see consistently. Like we talked about last week, like you having your list of like, hey, this is what I need to accomplish. This is why I'm waking up. This is how I want to be. In addition to that, it's beneficial to have those signs of success of like reaffirming statements of like things that motivate you that you see consistently, whether it's on your homepage, whether it's on whatever. Okay. But those are important because your brain's naturally going to be negative. So last thing about that though is if you have those signs of success, put them on and try to simplify them. Okay. So like, for example, Zach Sorensen, he used to say that confidence, concentration, and consistency. Those are the three things that he was striving for. Those are the three things he reminded himself of consistently. He had a sticky note and he put it on a mirror. And it said confidence, concentration, and consistency. That's what he wanted to bring to every day. But last thing I got for you guys today. With that self-talk, in addition to having those reframing statements, we also need to emphasize the positive. Like I mentioned earlier, we can't just mentally imagine ourselves doing something well. Whenever we do something well, we have to acknowledge it. We have to give it emphasis, okay? Because our brain will not, right? Then all of a sudden you look back at your career, you look back at your day, and it's only the negative things that your brain points out, right? So you never notice the fact that you go 2 for 3 with 2 doubles. You notice the fact that you struck out on a ball in the dirt, right? You never notice the fact that you made the routine play 20 times in a row, right? The only thing you notice is that play that was probably a 50-50 chance anyway, you messed it up when you could have done it well, right? And at the end of the day, when it comes to being successful, when it comes to playing sports well, when it comes to being a good person, it's about consistency, right? It's not about being able to make the great play once every 5 games or hitting avoiding striking out one time, right? That's not what it's about. It's about being consistent over the course of a season. Right, that's why baseball is so difficult, right? It's one of the only sports where you have to play every single day and show up, okay? But in order for that to happen, we need to make sure that we reaffirm when we do things well. So I'd encourage you guys to do that in your practice and in your gameplay, okay? If you barrel a ball, that's me. Tell yourself, that's me. That's who I am. That's who I want to be, right? Wake up every day and be like, I'm chasing that. I'm chasing those moments, okay? And then also pay attention to your negative thoughts, okay? And just reframe them to positive things that are also true, okay? That negative tinge that your brain automatically puts on, you can defeat it, okay? It just takes a little focus, right? But you can use that meditation, use that mental imagery to train your focus and train your awareness so that we can adjust accordingly. That makes sense? All right? You guys got any questions about mental imagery, meditation, anything like that? No questions? Okay. All right. Beautiful. Well, yeah, I appreciate you guys listening. Yeah, of course. The Receiver? Oh, no, I haven't. Is it good? Is it awesome?
Every time before he walks in the field, I'm the best. I'm healthy. I'm the best.
I'm the best.
I'm good. I'm good today. Today's a great day. My family's good.
Yeah.
We're going to go play football.
There you go. That's awesome. I'll have to watch that.